Good morning, everyone. Are we ready to proceed? We have quorum. Clerks are ready. Councillors, you ready?
I'm ready, sir.
All right. Our goal is to get us out of here by lunch. Apparently, there's a really hot lunch date at 12, so we've got to get moving. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. Yes, Councillor McMahon.
I have to, just let me look for the number, but I have to recuse myself from an item. Just, yeah, I'll note it when I come to it. Is that
All
okay?
right, sounds good to me. Can I get a motion to confirm the minutes of our January 19th, 2016 meeting? Councillor Wong Tam, thank you very much. And then we start on item number 27, which is page 58 of the Goldenrod. TE 14.27, appointment to Business Improvement Area Boards of Management, wards 14, 18, 20, 21, and 22. Councillor Mihevc. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.28, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 fire routes, 1491 Lakeshore Boulevard West, Ward 14. Councillor Perks.
Move to approve.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.29, preliminary report, 342 to 346 Davenport Road, zoning amendment application, Ward 20. Councillor Cressy.
Going to move the expanded notice area.
All those in favor?
The Wong Tam motion.
Opposed?
Oh, I want the normal expanded notice area, which is the Wong Tam version.
No, that is a more elaborate version with childcare and accessibility. Yeah.
I will be moving Wong Tam 1.0, please.
Okay.
Which is here. Yes.
Yeah.
That's 3.0.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. T 14.30, preliminary report, 1996 to 2000 Bathurst Street zoning amendment and rental housing demolition and conversion applications, Ward 21. Councillor Mihevc.
I'll move approval of the report with the request for the expanded notice area.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.31, preliminary report, 18 Brownlow Avenue, 174 to 200 Sudan Avenue, and 71 to 73 Redpath Avenue zoning amendment application, Ward 22. Councillor Matlow.
I'm happy to move a wonderfully written preliminary report with the extended notice area for perhaps the ultimate worst development application I've seen since I was elected councillor for Ward 22. I look forward to having a discussion with the community.
Are we giving out awards now for bad development
This is
applications?
actually kind of getting right up there now.
Good. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.33, preliminary report.
It's now refusal, 3-2.
3-2. Did I skip one over there?
Good way.
Oh. 1432A is actually a refusal report. Councillor Mallow, can we just have you move the refusal report as well for 100 Davenport?
Oh, this is councillor Wong.
This, are you sure?
That's
Oh, I just skipped one over. My apologies. TE 14.32, preliminary report, 100 Davenport Road zoning amendment application, Ward 27. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd ask that we move the, adopt the recommendations in the refusal report known as item TE 14.32A, and to also adopt recommendation number 1 in the preliminary report confirming the public consultation meeting, which I note has already taken place.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.33, preliminary report, 59 to 71 Mutual Street zoning amendment application and rental housing demolition, Ward 27. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I move to adopt the recommendations in the report by amending it with, I guess, the Wong-Tam motion 2.0, which 2.0, which actually includes the
There you
provision
go.
of childcare and accommodations as required and requested.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.34, preliminary report 60 Shooter Street and 187 to 189 Church Street zoning amendment application, Ward 27, Councillor Wong-Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to move the motion to amend the report and then to adopt the recommendations in the report.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.35, preliminary report 67 to 77 King Street East and 46 Colburn Street, zoning amendment application, Ward 28, Councillor McConnell.
Thank you. I'll move staff recommendations as well as the expanded notification.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.36, preliminary report 14 Dewhurst Boulevard, zoning amendment application, Ward 29, Councillor Fragedakis. I'm going to hold that one down. I'm going to hold down the next one for Councillor Fletcher. TE 14.38, preliminary report 2301.
This is the one I need to recuse myself
That's the
from.
one?
Thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll note that Councillor McMahon declared an interest on this item.
What's her interest?
Oh, what's your interest?
Live too close to this property.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Matlow, would you take the honors of,
I'm taking, well, whatever, it doesn't,
oh,
she's asked me to.
oh,
but it-
my,
You know, it
He's the
doesn't,
delegated.
my apologies. Councillor Mahavik.
I'll move approval of the staff recommendation with the expanded notice area and beer at the meeting. Oh, no, okay, forget that.
Have you noticed, so you took care of one, carriage of one in my ward because it was too close to a family. And does everyone just go to you and say, just let Mahavik do it? He's such a great counselor.
I suffered the nice guy syndrome.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
know.
very,
I have no development.
oh.
I have no developments.
No, I do.
Janet's getting my next
Suffer the
one.
not nice guy syndrome.
Okay,
Changed since you passed.
TE 14.39.
Hero.
It's all changed.
Oop. TE 14.39, assumption of services, Don Mount Court, Crescent. I'm going to hold that down for Councillor Fletcher. And there's a deputant on that item. TE 14.40, accessible loading zone, Dowling Avenue, Ward 14, Councillor Perks.
Move approval?
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.41, accessible loading zone, Beatrice Street, Ward 19. I'll move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.42, accessible loading zone, Dundas Street East, Ward 28. Councillor McConnell.
Yes, move staff recommendations. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.43, road alteration and traffic amendments, Lansdowne Avenue. I'll hold that down. Unless anyone's got any instructions from Councillor Bylaws? No? Okay. TE 14.44, road alterations, Dennison Avenue, Ward 20, Councillor Cressy.
I'm going to move the staff recommendations and note with great thanks the work of the Queen Street West BIA in creating this new parquet, soon to come at Dennison and Queen.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.45, streetcar loading platforms, College Street, Wards 19, 20, and 27.
I'll move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.46, construction staging area, Dovercourt Road, Ward 18. I'll hold that down. TE 14.47, construction staging area, 17 Dundonald Street, Ward 27. Councillor Wong-Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll be moving an amendment to the staff report. This will be known as the Wong-Tam 2.0. It's improving and expanding on the requirement for the 24-hour construction hotline number as well as public art. And you'll see before you, colleagues, that we have 7 construction staging requests in Ward 27. Sometimes these are corner locations, and they oftentimes take up at least, well, we know 1 street and sometimes 2 streets. And we want to make sure that the sites are at the very least swept daily and nightly and more frequently as needed to be cleared of any construction debris. I'm only going to go through this once because I'm going to move this 7 times. We're also going to direct the applicant to power wash the construction site and adjacent sidewalks and roadways weekly or more frequently as needed to be cleared of any construction debris and made safe. We're also going to ask that the applicant, in consultation with the transportation service staff, to maintain any bike lanes and install appropriate signage to inform drivers and cyclists of any changes to the cycling lanes. In areas where no cycling lanes exist, direct the applicant, in consultation with the transportation services, to install Sharrow markings on the roadway and display appropriate signage on the hoarding board to inform motorists and cyclists to safely share the road. Direct the applicant to ensure the existing sidewalks or the proposed pedestrian walkway have proper lighting to ensure safety and visibility at all times of the day and night. Direct the applicant to clearly consult and communicate all construction, parking, and road occupancy impacts with local business improvement areas and resident associations in advance of any physical road modifications. Direct the applicant to install appropriate signage and converging mirrors to ensure that pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists' safety is considered at all times. And with that, I move to amend the report.
Setting the bar. Thank you. On the motion and the item, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.48, construction staging area, Walton Street, Ward 27.
I won't repeat the entire motion, but I will move the amendment that you saw earlier. It's the same amendment for this item, and then to request that the recommendations of the staff report be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.49, construction staging area, 43 Gerrard Street East, Ward 27, Councillor Wong-Tam.
I'm sure by now you have no doubt what I'm about to do. Moving the amendments to the recommendations in the report.
All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.50, construction staging area, 454 to 464 Yonge Street, Ward 27, Councillor Wong-Tam.
I'll be moving the amendments to the recommendations in the staff report. Colleagues, you can notice that this is the 4th construction staging report on the agenda, with 3 more to go.
All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.51, construction staging area, Grenville Street, Ward 27, Councillor Wong-Tam.
Once again, moving the amendment to the recommendations of the staff report.
All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.52, construction staging area, 47 Hayden Street, Ward 27. Take a guess, Councillor Wong-Tam.
Yes, moving the amendments to the staff recommendations.
All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.53, construction staging area, 2 St. Thomas Street, Ward 27. Councillor Wong-Tam.
Moving to amend the staff recommendations, and with that, this is our 7th construction staging area report. We have effectively requested the closing down of 11 city streets for periods of 3 to 5 years for construction.
All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.54, installation of on-street accessible parking space, February 2016. Someone else gets to speak. Ward 18, Councillor Bylaws.
Thank you. Approve staff recommendations.
All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.55, installation and removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, wards 18, 20, 22, and 32. Councillor Matlow.
Oh, yeah, I move staff recommendation.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.56, parking amendment, Coal Mine Road, Ward 18, Councillor Bylaws.
I'm sorry, but I will have to defer that to the April Community Council.
A deferral until April. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 14.57, parking amendment, Rathnally Road, Ward 22, Councillor Matlow.
Yes, on behalf of the Sovereign Republic of Rathnaly, I've been asked to defer it for one round until the next community council, as we are still having a discussion about what we'd like the outcome to look like.
We will see them in April. All those in favor of the deferral? Opposed? That carries.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. You not read about it? It's in the papers.
It's a thing, it's an independent
Where you been?
thing.
Where you been?
The citizens of Rathnaly have passports. It's a remarkable part of our city, yet not part of our country.
TE 14.58, parking amendment, Ramsden Road, Park Road, Ward 27, Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much. I move to adopt the recommendations in the staff report. Oh, sorry. Retract that, please. Sorry.
You want to defer for 6 months?
Sorry, I apologize. I am not moving the staff recommendations, but rather asking that we defer the consideration of this report until our meeting of September 7, 2016.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.59, U-turn prohibition, DuPont Street at Salem Avenue, Ward 18, Councillor Wong Tam.
Wong Tam?
Councillor Bylaws. I'm so used to saying it.
I know.
at the beginning, and I was looking straight at you. Councillor Bylaws.
Approve staff recommendations, thanks.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.60, turn prohibition, Queen Street West and Lisgar Street, Ward 18, Councillor Bylaws.
Can I extend this one? Because I think we don't need this anymore. I'm going to have to speak to staff. I think it's redundant based on the next item.
Okay, we'll hold that down. The next item is TE 14.61, traffic regulations, West Queen West Neighborhood, Ward 18, Councillor Bylaws.
Approve staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.62, traffic control signal, College Street and Shaw Street, Ward 18. Ward 8 and 19, not 18, Ward 19. That's me. I will move the staff recommendations. Just for everyone's information, this is the last piece of connecting the Shaw Street contraflow lane. It's the light at College that allows people to get through. This lane tripled the bike ridership in the year it was installed. So it's a great piece, and it'll connect up to the new Bloor Street bike lane. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.62, traffic control signal amendment. 6.3, traffic control signal amendment, Harbord Street and Ossington Avenue, Ward 19. I'll move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.64, heavy truck prohibition, Mill Street, Ward 28, Councillor McConnell.
I'll move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.65, speed hump poll results, Raglan Avenue, Ward 21, Councillor Mahavik.
This is the last street that doesn't have speed humps, so I approve the alternate recommendations.
All those in favor of the alternate recommendations?
And how,
All those opposed? That carries. Traffic calming,
how close are you?
TE 14.66, traffic calming, Devon Road, Ward 32, Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to stand this down, as I may have some super keen residents to speak to this.
Oh, if the residents could just identify themselves to the clerks who are sitting to my right with the two computers and their hands up, that'd be great. And if for that matter, if you're here to speak to any item on the agenda that we haven't dealt with already, and you haven't signed up with us, and your name is not on the green sheet, you can speak with the clerks there, and we'll make sure we have your names. Thank you. TE 14.67, pedestrian bridge connecting Hudson Bay Company and Toronto Eaton Centre, 220 Yonge Street, Ward 27. Councillor, and 28. All right. Let's make note of that. Who would like to take the honors?
I would I would move to adopt the staff recommendations and probably just take notes and say thank you to Councillor McConnell and her staff for working on this. If I can just bring members' attention to recommendation number 1, there's 26 subpoints to that. This is a very technical agreement that we're entering into with the Eden Center and Hudson's Bay, where that 40-year-old bridge that sort of cantilevers over Queen Street, as you know, at the corner of Queen and Yonge, has to be replaced. And that is going to be, of course, going to have some construction impacts on a major transit route. Councillor McConnell and I will work closely with the community to make sure that everyone has adequate notice. But I do think that the ultimate new design by Zeidler Architects is quite visually and architecturally striking. So more short-term construction pain for long-term gain. We have to get to Saks Fifth Avenue.
Thank you very much. Just on an interesting heritage note, I believe the easement agreement itself has heritage value because of the original signatories on it, which is pretty cool. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.68, extension of overnight on-street parking permit hours, Verrill Street, Ward 30, Councillor Fletcher. I'll hold that down. TE 14.69, realign, that's Councillor Fletcher. I'll hold down 6.9 and 7.0. TE 14.71, receipt of the 2016 Agnes McPhail Awards. Ward 31, Councillor Davis. Would you be so kind as to move the recipient of the 2016 Agnes McPhail Award?
Yes, I'll move adoption of the recommendation.
Thank you very much. All to speak? Please go right ahead, Councillor Mallow.
No, I wanted to speak to it simply just to, are we allowed to speak? The name is public. Okay, yeah, I figured that, so I just wanted to confirm that. I just wanted to just express my my strong support for Patrick Rocca's nomination and his selection. He has been a remarkable community contributor. There is virtually no community event or fundraising initiative or school fair that I can think of in my community, along with Councillor Burnside's, and I'm sure the rest of East York, where Patrick Rocca hasn't been a really big part of it. And I just wanted to acknowledge on behalf of my community our gratitude and our support for this nomination. And I know that he's very, very honored to accept it.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Congratulations, Mr. Roca. I'll hold down the party clause, 14.72. And then we have one more on the goldenrod. It's TE 14.73, parking regulation amendment, the Esplanade on Market Street, Ward 28, Councillor McConnell.
Oh, I forgot that one. Yes. That's fine. I'll move the staff recommendation.
All those in favor? Oh, pardon me?
It's just recommendation 1.
Recommendation 1.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
It's on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. I need a motion to add to new business TE 14.74 from Councillor Cressy and TE 14.75 from Councillor Perks. Councillor Perks, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Yes, Councillor Mahavik.
Could I just indulge the committee for number 30, TE 14.30? I need to reopen it and go back to the staff recommendations. It's around the notice area because they've,
Okay, reopen. All those in favor? Opposed?
You need, just a short version is go with the staff recommendation, which is a smaller, which is a notice area in consultation with the local councillor.
So you'd like to move the staff recommendations?
It's on the advice of staff.
All right, at 14.30 on the staff recommendations, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Did we get that?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Before we go back to number 1, Councillor Bylaws, there was 3 that I held down for you, 43, 46, and 60. Do you want to just deal with those now?
Absolutely.
We just opened them. Let's give it, hold your horses, Councillor Perks.
43,
Yes, 43, TE 14.43, road alteration, traffic amendment, Lansdowne.
approve staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.46, construction staging area, Dovercourt Road, Ward 18.
We approved that one. No?
Did we? No, no, we haven't done that one.
Okay, sorry, just felt like it. There were
Okay.
so many staging areas. It felt like mine went through. Yes, approve staff recommendations.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Great, thank you.
Can we do 60 as well?
Sure. 14.60 is turn prohibition, Queen Street West and Lisgar.
So
Council,
move receipt.
move receipt. On receipt, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Welcome, Councillor Fletcher. We are at item number 1. Let's let her get comfortable. Yeah, let her get settled. No, let's hold your horses, Councillor Perks. They're just circulating them. TE 14.4, I'm going to do it while you're out of the room. TE 14.1, final report, 456 Shaw Street Common Elements condominium application. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? No. Any questions of staff? None. I'm prepared to move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.2, final report, 40, 46, 48, 50, 52, and 60 McCall Street and 10 Stephanie Street zoning amendment, Ward 20. I have some speakers to the item. The first is Patricia Jacobs, Executive Director, University Settlement. Hi there, Patricia. You're going to have 5 minutes. The clock's over to my right. I'll start your time. When you get settled, just make sure the light's on the microphone in front of you.
So this works? Good.
Perfect.
Good morning. I'm Patricia Jacobs, Executive Director of University Settlement, located at 23 Grange Road, immediately to the northwest of the proposed development. Through consultation with city staff, Councillor Cressy, and the applicant's representatives, our concerns about the development have, for the most part, been addressed. These concerns included, firstly, the shadow impact on our daycare outdoor play areas. Now that the proposed height of the building has been reduced and the massing shifted, the shadow impact has also been reduced to a level that is acceptable to University Settlement. Our second concern was about the continued access to the daycare and emergency exit for University Settlement, both during construction and after. This proposal adequately addresses both those matters. Our third concern was about the impact of the construction phase on a number of counts, including the pickup and drop-off of children at our daycare and the use of our outdoor childcare play areas. Our seniors, University Settlement is a designated elderly person center, and many of our senior clients and our neighbors use devices such as walkers, scooters, and wheelchairs to get around. And we had concerns about staff parking and deliveries during construction. Again, this proposal requires the owner to submit a construction management plan to the satisfaction of the appropriate senior city staff in consultation with the ward councillor. And Councillor Cressy has assured University Settlement that its construction concerns will be addressed in that plan. So, with our concerns having been addressed or in the process of being so, University Settlement supports the proposal. I would like to express our appreciation to city staff, Councillor Cressy and his staff, and the applicant's representatives for their responsiveness about the issues we raised, and we look forward to welcoming our new neighbors into the community.
Yes, Councillor Cressy.
I only had one question. There was one other issue that University Settlement had previously raised that hasn't initially been addressed, but we're going to seek to address in the amendment that relates to the street art hoarding.
Yes.
You want to expand on what you were looking for? I just want to make sure I have it down right.
We were looking for space on the hoarding so that we could improve our visibility in the community with children's art and with other references to University Settlement to make people aware we actually exist on the park.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none. Sita Ramkalawansing. Hi, Sita.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking my deputation, although Gord Perk says he's going to give me a medal for the number of times I've been here over the years. In our letter, which has been circulated to the members of the council, we identified a number of issues, and based on what I know, it's been largely addressed, but I just quickly want to point out what they were. The first has to do with windows and the lighting on the stained glass. I know that the applicant, from an email that I got this morning, indicated their willingness to pay for lighting to do that. I can't imagine that that is a satisfactory heritage solution, but since the church and others seem to be satisfied with that, but I just do want to point out that lighting and covering up a stained glass window like this is actually, I imagine Mary McDonald would probably have a few things to say about that. We're not at all convinced that this gallery is actually going to be built at the north corner, at the corner of Grange and McCall. And part of what we want to do is, because if this is being built in a number of phases, we're concerned about the ongoing amount of construction that will take place in our neighborhood. If that gallery is not being built at the same time, we would like to see proper landscaping, not just a hoarding sign at that corner. And we'd certainly like to see whatever design features go in there in the interim to be consistent with the $10 million revitalization plan for Grange Park. The third item that we raised had to do with traffic. And I've had conversations with Councillor Cressy's office about introducing two-way only up until the point of the access to the driveway to the church parking lot. We do not want to see two-way go all the way over to John Street because it will have an impact on the contraflow bike lane, as well as our efforts to make John Street more pedestrianized. In our letter, we articulated the range of issues we want to see addressed in this Section 39 plan. Right now, the wording is very general, but we wanted to specify it so that people do not forget what it is we're interested in. Two more quick points. I know that in our community, we've often felt that construction management plans really ought to be considered at the same time as rezoning applications so that you can actually see the full impact of the development. And this is really something I think the city needs to do in the long run. And my final point has to do with the percentage of dollars allocated for social housing and TCHC. And I've said to Joe, it's been at least 10 years since the 10% number was introduced by former Councillor Vaughan. And I think you need to think about inflation and maybe at some point increasing that to 15%, both for repairs as well as for contribution to new housing. And I see we might have some wording on the proposed amendment, so I can't comment on that. So those are my comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none.
Yeah.
The last speaker I have is on the list is David Tang.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is David Tang. I'm the solicitor for the Church Wardens of St. George the Martyr Church, which is the church that is located immediately to the west of the subject site. I have filed with the city a February 19th letter that sets out the church's primary concerns with the application. Very briefly, they are the impact of the massing primarily on the stained glass window, which really is a focal point and defines the character of the church itself, as well as is important to the manner in which the church operates on Sunday mornings. Access to the church's parking lot over both the course of the construction period and afterwards, and then impacts on the heritage building during the construction phase. Those are the three primary concerns. Now, since that letter, my client and I have had significant discussions with both Councillor Cressy's office as well as with the applicant. Those were in fact quite helpful. They were, we've been doing that as recently as early this morning, and those have given, I think, my client a significant amount of hope that the matters that they are concerned about can be resolved. The resolution that we would hope to achieve ideally before the bill is introduced at City Council. We'd like to keep open the prospect that the bylaw itself might need to change at that point. And so we are asking that the bills would be held pending resolution of my client's concerns by way of either an agreement or, if necessary, further amendments to the bylaw. And that's a motion that I understand that Councillor Cressy is prepared to move today. So with that comment, with that possibility left open, I think what I'd like to do is to say that my client would like to have the opportunity to work quickly over the course of the next several weeks with the applicant in order to resolve those concerns based upon a recommendation that the bills not be introduced until those resolutions are found. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Cressy.
These are the outstanding concerns, because I know we had many others we've been working on together with the church for years, but these are the final ones, correct?
These are the final primary outstanding concerns. Yep.
So just to be clear, in terms of the request as it relates to an amendment that the bills are held until appropriate agreements, you're talking about the private agreements that would be negotiated between the church and the applicant. You're not talking about the rezoning. You're talking about the final bills being held until the church has negotiated that agreement as it relates to construction, parking, directly with the applicant. Is that correct?
Yes. In other words, a private agreement can very well resolve the planning concerns my client has. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that in the context of this table. And it's the rezoning, you want the comfort with an amendment that the final bills, which are determined at council, that they will be held until that private agreement is confirmed. That's correct?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Seeing none. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this item? No? Any questions? Yes? If you could, identify yourself and you'll have 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. My name is Calvin Lance, and I'm here representing the applicant. So we have an application here for a 14-story building, a 3-story private art gallery, and I'm pleased to be here speaking on behalf of the client with respect to a positive staff report. I think it's important to recognize our client's been in direct conversation with the church and with the community associations for 2.5 years. And they've been quite productive. As indicated on the staff report on the first page, the significant changes have been made to the application to be sympathetic to the surrounding areas, including OCAD, AGO, and the church to the west. And it results in the building being pushed back from Stephanie Street, providing for a privately owned public open space to the south. In addition to the Section 37 contributions being made in the amount of $1 million going to landscape improvements, parks, and affordable housing, There's also going to be easements secured for pedestrian and other access points through the site along the west and to the east and west, so it's permeating the site. With respect to the staff recommendations, we're supportive of them, with the exception that staff is recommending minimum parking on the site of 136 spaces. What our client wishes to provide in order to avoid going down to another level of below-grade parking is a total of 96 spaces consisting of 85 resident spaces and a minimum of 11 visitor spaces. And it seems to be appropriate to do that given that there's more than 600 public parking spaces across the street from this proposal. I want to talk about some of the comments we heard this morning. We've seen the letter from Mr. Tang, and we had an opportunity to speak with him. I understand Mr. Tang was retained by the church on Thursday, and what's not apparent in his correspondence to council and is not brought out is that the discussions with the church have been happening directly since 2013. And the issues that have been raised in his letter have been the subject of much discussion with our client and with city staff on the church's behalf. And the concerns really break down into three areas. One is preserving views of the church and ensuring that there's appropriate lighting of the east facade of the church, and in particular on the large stained glass window. The second area of concern that was discussed were the construction management plan issues relating to arrangements for interim parking during the construction and how to protect the church. And the third area that was being discussed is the future access to the church parking over lands owned by the applicant. So with respect to the shadow drawings, city staff have requested that the building be set back, as I indicated, and that'll allow for the 195 square meter privately owned public space at the front of the church. Our shadow studies indicate that there are no shadow impacts on that large stained glass window in the studied times in March and September. And with respect to the studied time in June, there's a very minimal amount of shadow for approximately 20 minutes in June. And I have shadow studies available here. If someone would ask me to share those with you, I'm happy to do so. We understand that there's been a request by the church for backlighting of a window. Our client's prepared to pay for that backlighting, but again, to emphasize, that backlighting would facilitate lighting a window as a result of shadows not caused by the proposed development, but existing shadows that are there because of slab buildings in the area. With respect to the construction management plan, there's been ongoing discussions about that, discussions last year, and a draft encroachment and access agreement provided to the church in January. We have yet to receive comments back. But we're not seeing any issues with preparing a construction management plan. Future access to the parking at the rear, that was raised by the church. That was always on the table for our client, and it's contemplated that we'll provide access to the church both during, we'll have alternative arrangements for parking during construction and contemplate arrangements for access to their parking over lands that we own. And so that's not an issue, and it's pretty straightforward to secure that.
We're going to have to get you to sum up.
So just with respect to, just in summary, with respect to the request by the church for an agreement to be entered into, as much as we're working cooperatively with the church, they have now retained a lawyer. I cannot guarantee, I cannot say to my client with certainty that we will enter into an agreement with them, but I can say they've preserved their appeal rights. And we are motivated to work with the church to have this agreement finalized to avoid an appeal. But to hold the bills until a private agreement is entered into with a party that we cannot compel to enter into that agreement, I think would be setting a very dangerous precedent here. I think they are not prejudiced. They put in their letter of appeal, or sorry, their letter of concern, preserving their appeal rights. We're motivated to avoid an appeal. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Cressy.
Just a couple quick questions. One, the Honorary President of the Grange Community Association, or deputation, referred to a concern related to if the gallery, because the rezoning here is for a building and a 3-story gallery, if the gallery is not constructed at the same time, what happens? I'm going to have an amendment related to that, and I want to ask if the applicant is prepared, if it is not constructed at the same time, to work with the community to develop it into a plaza.
Yes. So there's been plans prepared for the art gallery, a lot of money spent on it. The plan is to go forward, but in the event it doesn't go forward, what we would contemplate is that through the site plan approval process, there would be an interim condition for the lands that would occupy the art gallery site. We've done that in other properties, but you'd have an ultimate build-out condition, and there would be triggers that if a building permit is not pulled for the entire development at the same time, then you would need to take steps to put in an interim landscaped condition on the art gallery site. And the nature of that landscape condition could be negotiated with staff and the community.
Well, and I think on that, the amendment that I will be planning to move is that will be to the satisfaction of staff as well as the local residents association. And that's something the applicant is.
Yeah, I think we can work with that, yes.
And construction was raised a couple times. So there's a proposal in the final report here related to the Section 37 on a construction management plan prior to any building permits being issued, and it outlined some of the core components that we expect to be accounted for, in addition to working with the community related to university settlement, the church, and others. That construction management plan prior to any building permits is something that the applicant is willing to work with us on?
Absolutely, yeah.
As it relates to, just finally, because you had mentioned 3 points, as it relates to St. George the Martyr Church, I understand that conversations have been going on for some time, and council has been retained on their side, as you've mentioned. So there is a willingness regarding construction and its impact on parking, on its impact on the physical integrity of the building, for a private agreement to be entered into with the church related to both those pieces, as well as the issue of backlighting.
Yes, absolutely. The draft of the agreement you're speaking of was provided to them early in January, following some lengthy discussion. It involves pre-construction surveys, post-construction surveys, insurance, indemnification clauses, et cetera. All the things you'd expect to see as part of an access encroachment agreement, and then that can be rolled into a construction plan agreement. It's always been contemplated we'd be doing this, so none of this is new.
Okay. So I have no further questions. If there are others, I will just say that I'm going to plan to hold this down before speaking to address some of the concerns raised and some amendments.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, are there any other members of the public to speak to this item? No? We'll hold this down just for Councillor Cressy to work his magic. And we'll move on to TE 14.3, final report, 33 Holly Street, 44 Dunfield Avenue, 86 and 88 Sudan Avenue, residential demolition application under municipal chapter Code Chapter 667, Ward 22. Councillor Matlow, are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, are there any questions of staff? No? Councillor Matlow to speak.
I'm moving staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.
Thank you for hearing me out, everyone.
TE 14.4, designation of the historic Yonge Street Heritage Conservation District under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. We have 6 speakers. Staff have recommended that we do a presentation first. Who's going to be making this presentation? Hello. And there's been a request for a short presentation. We're going to see how short we can make it, but The request, as she's on her way out the door, so I'll start your time, and please go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the Community Council. I think if we could have just a second, I believe we had some slides to... We can go without them if it's too much.
Do we have? Yeah, typically it's the computer with slides is plugged in right beside you there.
I think we'll proceed without them then. Okay. All right, thank you. Sorry about the delay.
That's okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of Community Council. My name is Michael Vidoni. I'm a heritage planner here at the city, and I've been the project lead for the historic Yonge Street Heritage Conservation District plan. This is an important moment for HCDs in Toronto. The report that you have before you for consideration is the second that we brought to you for consideration in about 3 months. And I think we'd all agree that historic Yonge Street is a special place for Toronto, and that a Heritage Conservation District will give it the much-needed protection so that it remains that way into the future. This is Toronto's main street and an important early transportation corridor that's variously been a place of congregation, celebration, and even rebellion. And that there's an intact collection of 19th and early 20th century buildings that speak to that history. This is brought to you within the council-adopted Heritage Conservation Districts in Toronto policy, which is a comprehensive framework for evaluating and designating heritage conservation districts. This was undertaken by our consultants, Dialogue Inc., along with Philip Goldsmith Architect and Bray Heritage. But it was a city-driven process, and it forms part of the work program for city planning. This underwent study in 2013 and 14, was endorsed by the Toronto Preservation Board last summer to proceed with the plan. Throughout the plan phase, we undertaken policy development analysis, community consultation in October, as well as stakeholder interviews, all of which was completed consistent with the HCDs in Toronto policy document. The project team included representatives from across the division and outside the division in order to guide and review the document, which includes community planning, urban design, and legal services. Legal Services has reviewed the document for consistency with current policy, and HPS, or Heritage Preservation Services, is satisfied that the plan satisfies requirements of HCD policy document as well as the Ontario Heritage Act. I'd like to ask Antonio Gomez Palacio to give a brief summary of the plan and its contents.
Thank you. And I'll add a couple of quick pieces, one on process and a couple on outcomes. In terms of process, for us, this is a great milestone. It's a very important moment, but it is a culmination of a very extensive conversation. It started in 2013, and it included residents, property owners, business owners. The councillor was present in many of our events, and it really incorporated the comments and the feedback of very different perspectives. As a result, we see that this is a tremendous opportunity to conserve what is really one of the most cherished streets in Toronto, as a main street, as a street for celebrations, for events, as a huge part of our collective history and story. And very much it is about guiding development, it's about guiding growth for the city as we move forward. And the outcomes try to balance much of the different interests in the corridor to really try and identify what is cherished and how can we start to guide the things that are not contributing to the existing character in a way that in the future they do. So they deal with things like the built form, like the landscape, the streetscape, and how all of this functions as a district. So you will see in the document that it includes a list of contributing properties and a list of properties that do not contribute, but it provides policies and guidelines for how the district can evolve over time. So we do see this as a tremendous opportunity for the street, for the community, and for Toronto itself in terms of conserving and managing the evolution of one of its most cherished streets. Thank you very much. We remain available for any comments that you may have or questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff, or do we can always wait until after the questions, after the deputations from members of the public, just so we have the benefit of their input when we ask you questions. So don't go far. The first speaker is Alexandra de Gasperis. You'll have 5 minutes, and I'll start your time. The clock's to my right.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of Community Council. My name is Alexandra de Gasperis from Kagan-Shastri. We represent the owners of 619, 621, and 623 Yonge Street, located within the proposed Yonge Street Heritage Conservation District, the owners being Harvett Enterprises Limited, Glowin Enterprises Limited, and M. Weiner Enterprises Limited, collectively known as Weiner Enterprises Limited. The proposed HCD, as outlined in our letter dated February 22nd, 2016, is flawed. This is evident in the staff recommendation that my client's property be included on Toronto's Heritage Registrar. A picture of my client's property was attached to the letter I submitted yesterday. I have a colored copy for the clerk if you require that to be distributed. This recommendation is entirely not appropriate, as this building holds no heritage or cultural significance. It is unclear how city staff have come to the conclusion that our client's property is worthy of contributing, given that the means by which such a determination is to be made under Section 4.2 have not been clearly identified. Many letters with respect to the staff recommendation have been submitted with similar concerns and objection as my client's. The plan is overly restrictive, using a one-size-fits-all approach, which will hinder development in an area which the city's official plan prescribes the highest amount of height and density. This is contrary to provincial policy. The letters of concern and/or objection that have been filed are indicative of the fact that staff must review these comments and take them into consideration, incorporating them into a revised report. It is possible that a refined study would make recommendations that differ from the ones before Council today. I submit that Council should refer the matter back to staff for a refined study which takes into account all of the comments received by the public and bring forward a new recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? No? Thank you. The next deputant is Catherine Holden. Good morning.
Good morning. I don't think this is working. There it is.
Perfect.
Good morning to all of you, Mr. Chair and members of the Toronto East York Community Council. I am Catherine Holden. I am a 10-year member of the Bay Clover Hill Community Association, and I'm here today in strong support of this HCD on historic Yonge Street. A group of very committed community residents has been working very hard on this project since 2011. And as you heard Dialogue say, they've been involved since 2013, but a lot of things happened prior to that to actually nominate this group of very special buildings from long ago. The last group of such buildings on Yonge Street that look like this. We do want to move forward with the times, but we do want to save our past as well. I represent the BCCA, but I have to say that we have been in consultation regularly with other communities right in this downtown area. The Church Wellesley Neighborhood Association, Bloor East Neighborhood Association, and Greater Yorkville Residents Association. All four of us have worked hard to make this happen. I do want to say that when this is passed, and I have full confidence that you will see that it is important to our city's heritage. When it is passed, as a community, we are committed to taking it to whatever level we have to in order to see it continue. If perchance there is an OMB appeal, we will try our best to do what we have to do to be there to support this document and to make sure that the community has a strong voice in the procuring of an HCD, this plan for the future of historic Yonge Street. That's really all I want to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? No? Thank you. The next up is Kate Fairbrother.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. I'm a solicitor from Davies Howe Partners here on behalf of our client Oberon Development Corporation. Our client owns the property at 615 Yonge Street, which is on the block just north of Gloucester Street, right in the middle. It's a small property. It's about 3,000 square feet, and it currently houses a 6-story building that has been identified as a contributing property under the HCD plan. Our client recognizes the historical importance of the historic Yonge Street area and does commend the city for its efforts in protecting and conserving the integrity of the area's heritage resources. But respectfully, there are certain aspects of the plan that, in our client's view, go too far and are unnecessarily restrictive. These comments are reflected in letters that have been submitted by other property owners in the area. So I'm not going to belabor them extensively today, but I would submit from our client's perspective that these restrictive policies in particular impact small sites such as our clients. The plan does recognize and encourage the possibility of additions and alterations to properties in this area, including contributing properties. However, the restrictive and prescriptive policies have the effect of rendering any alterations to small sites impossible, and it's our client's view that the effect of these types of restrictive plans will mean that property owners in this area will no longer be motivated or in fact able to make any positive restorative changes to their properties, and in fact this might have the contrary outcome to the intention of the plan. Again, our submissions are reflected in a letter that we sent. It was dated yesterday, but was only circulated this morning, and I have extra copies if the clerk would like a copy. But those, again, are generally our submissions on behalf of our client. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thanks. Connie Logiel. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Connie Longiel. I'm part of the Church Wellesley Neighborhood Association. I'd like to, first of all, thank you for allowing us to be here today to speak to the Heritage Conservation District. As one of the nominators, I, of course, am strongly in support of proceeding with the Heritage Conservation District. A little bit of history, it's kind of like the change that's been swept over Toronto in the last decade or so that actually formed the Church Wellesley Neighborhood Association, that brought a group of neighbors together to decide it was time that we wanted to have a voice in what our neighborhood looked like and what our city looked like. So thank you to the change in Toronto that put us here today, that put the HCD in front of you. I see the HCD as a huge catalyst on Yonge Street. Right now, it's kind of like an orphan space. There is no strong BIA that sort of brands or labels that area, and it's pretty much up to who rents, who owns, what development comes in, what owner decides to maintain his building or allow his building to go derelict. The HCD will be sort of a bonding stability and give the area an identity. I think we all know what happened to Yorkville once it had an identity. I wish we all would have bought a row house 40 years ago. Maybe we wouldn't be sitting here now. But as far as value goes, the Heritage Conservation District, I firmly believe, will not only shine that shine and sort of magnify the importance of heritage in Toronto, it's also value adding to properties that are there. There are only so many properties that can be contained within this district. Unfortunately, we couldn't include a bigger area, but any of those that are in that catchment area, in my personal opinion, I'm not, a land developer or anything, will only see benefit. I also want to speak to the fact that volunteering, and I don't want people to misunderstand what volunteering means in any stretch of the imagination. Through volunteering for Church Wellesley Neighborhood Association, it has been my privilege to work with many professionals who make it part of their sort of social conscience or their activities they're giving back to Toronto. I've interacted with professionals on all levels. What I have learned is absolutely phenomenal. I would not trade anything. Working with the team at Dialogue has also been an exceptional eye-opener. Being able to sit at meetings and listen to how processes work, give me respect to the fact that you do have to have patience. Sometimes things don't work quite as fast as you would like them to, but in the end, hopefully, when the community all comes together, it will work. I again want to just say that Yonge Street is huge in my heart. I live on Gloucester Street. I'm a few minutes away from Yonge Street. I raised 3 children downtown. They all still live downtown. None of them drive. They all bike. And they can't think of a Toronto without Yonge Street. I think it's time we give it the respect due. I think it's time that we move forward, continue the rhythm from Yorkville down Yonge Street. I know there's other pieces that can connect so that Toronto will be one beautiful sort of patchwork of how we respect and how we celebrate heritage in our city. I again thank you for your time and your consideration for the HCD.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputant? Yes, Councillor Davis.
How long has it taken?
What?
I see there's about 5 reports previous to this one.
Well, as Catherine Holden pointed out, it began 5 years ago. So many powwows, many coffees, many getting together, many defining of, many where the map goes, many hours of walking the streets, looking up histories and these types of things. You can't take away what each of us has learned. You can't take away the value that we now have and the respect that we now have. Like I say, I just envision this absolutely stunning stretch of Yonge Street that will definitely be the envy of areas north, which are usually pretty nicely maintained, and areas south where there's still sort of gray areas down there as well, as the model. This will become the model of when you come to Toronto, you need to see the CN Tower, go see a baseball or hockey game, but you really got to hit Yonge Street and Yorkville. I just see it as that important.
Thank you very much for your work, too.
Oh, my pleasure, ma'am.
Thank you. The next up is Harvey Garman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, councillors. I'm a local resident. I own one of the St. Nicholas 1884 townhouses. This is actually my father-in-law, who I didn't put on the list, but would like to speak at the end when you call for additional people. I have, and I've submitted copies of objections from 11 local property owners, including 670, 620, 622, 636, 638, 644, 626, and 634 Yonge, as well as 7, 9, and 11 Irwin, and of course my own property on St. Nicholas Street. Let me just say, I'm for managed development. I don't like, 50-story towers on every block. We have one at the top of our street, 75 St. Nicholas, which I think was absurd. That said, I'm not against all development. I think this plan way overreaches and will not accomplish its intentions. Good intentions, but it's just not going to work, I don't believe. In terms of a good plan, I think there's 2 main factors. One is that it encourages responsible development, respects the neighborhood character, but also acknowledges local challenges. We all know, or if you walk down that area, it's quite gritty along Yonge. Many of the buildings are not in good shape and need massive repairs. And I'm not sure this plan really provides for that, given the limited heritage subsidies. I also think, in terms of a plan, you don't want something that overreaches. You want to maintain the facades, the streetscape, the setbacks. I don't think you need to go so far as this plan does, which dealing with the entire building and what can be done. I also think this, a good plan respects all stakeholders, including property owners. I don't think this plan does that. It does target, it seems to target property owners with undue hardship in terms of what they can do, essentially who they can sell to. This is going to prohibit redevelopment of the block. And quite frankly, you have the model, the St. Joseph condo, which has the rebuild along Yonge Street and the two, three-story buildings on the streetscape with the condo well set back, I think is an excellent model. You have a RBC branch going in because they were able to tailor their location. I think that kind of a model in terms of managed redevelopment works. The buildings are nice and they fit within the street. In terms of why I object, there's various reasons to this, why I object to this plan in this the way it's been designed. As I said, it's overreaching in its scope. You're looking at the streetscape, the setbacks, the facades. You don't need to go with the entire buildings or what's been done or what's been recommended. Number two, the consultant's report doesn't tell the full story. As I mentioned, the pictures are quite glossy and nice, but if you actually walk down that area of the street, lots of the buildings are not in good shape. They were built, as was mentioned many times, years and years and years ago with outdated building materials, tar paper between walls, foundation issues, rotting wood beams. I'm not sure how you fix some of that stuff. The report should have also expanded upon the lifespan of some of these buildings. It's great if you preserve them, but if they all fall down or a bunch of them fall down, then what do you have? So I think that needed to be included in any report. I think the financial burden is borne overly heavily on the actual property owners. The entire community, in theory, would benefit. Then if you're going to restrict development and restrict redevelopment like that, you need to provide more financial compensation or incentives or tax subsidies or something for that. As I mentioned earlier, because of the way the plan is proposed, designed as proposed, you can't responsibly redevelop because there's no teardowns and rebuilds like that St. Joseph condo. So basically, you try to fix some of this stuff, some of these buildings, which may be impossible or extremely expensive, or you basically can't sell out to people who might want to sell and responsibly redevelop. And finally, you have an arbitrary and unfair effective date. Many owners have sold out already. There's lots of condos up or going in right now. Again, you walk down, there's a couple of pits. You got one just south of Bloor. You've got one south of St. Joseph. I think there's a couple more is heavily on stream. So the people such as Mr. Hawkridge here will speak later, who did not sell out because they've owned their property in their family for many, many, many years. You're basically penalizing these people for caring about the neighborhood, not being able to sell to someone who would responsibly redevelop. So in conclusion, I think the plan is unfair to property owners. It isn't going to really work, quite frankly. You're just going to end up with a bunch of not very nice buildings with the payday lenders and other tenants, because you're not going to get great tenants in this area as currently constituted. And I urge you to reject it as currently proposed and send it back for a revisit or relook. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you could just state your name so we've got it on the record.
Albert Hawkridge. I am the third generation of Hawkridge China, which has been in business for over 100 years in the same location at 638 Yonge Street. I own 3 properties on the block, which were owned by my parents and grandparents before me. I am not opposed to trying to fix up Yonge Street. I've been a member of the Yonge Street Businessmen's Association, and we tried to clean up Yonge Street a little bit. But this particular plan, I think, is just a real undue hardship to try and restore these buildings. If you know my particular building, it faces Gloucester Street. It was a utilitarian building in 1900 when my grandfather moved into it, and it's still that way. It's a unique building in the sense that there are not many of them surviving. But to try and maintain the entire building instead of just the front, if you want to have a historical feeling to the street, it's an overwhelming burden to try and maintain these properties. They were, as my son-in-law said, they were never built as a bank was built. You know, the house on Irwin is even older than the houses on Yonge Street. So I would like you to reconsider trying to make the whole building and the entire property something that is deserving of being protected. And I can see trying to maintain the front. We have many customers from United States come and other parts of Canada, and they all like to walk Yonge Street. But they are kind of shocked when they leave Bloor and Yonge and come down Yonge Street towards Wellesley. There isn't a plant, there isn't a half-decent lamppost, there's absolutely nothing. And for you to increase the costs so enormously, where you cannot find a tenant that can barely pay the rent as is with the taxes that are, it is an overwhelming burden. I would like to see this property survive, but you're asking an enormous amount from people who actually own these properties. I have surveyed our lot, our property, which is from St. Joseph to Irwin, from Yonge to St. Nicholas, and I have managed to get most of my neighbors to agree to this. And the other problem is that we do have a fair number of owners whose first language is not English, and it's very difficult to explain to them what is happening under this, or else we may have actually had the entire block. The houses on St. Joseph Street that face the new condo are beautiful Victorian homes, and maintaining the front of them would be a real added to. The houses on Irwin Street are not on the south side. On the north side, they are Victorian, and they're beautiful homes as well, brick buildings. The south side is mostly tar paper, basically, fake brick buildings. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, just on that point, the report even says those buildings are brick, and they're not. So I don't know where the consultants got that from.
So we're just able to now ask questions.
Sorry.
We don't get to go into a little bit of dialogue, but are there any questions of the deputant? No? Thank you very much. The next speaker is Larita Balcos. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Council. My name is Lucretia Balcos. I sent in a letter yesterday. I do not know if you all have a copy of it or if you've read all of it.
We will have received it in our package for the meeting.
Okay, so I will highlight on certain things. First of all, I wanted to say that I represent a group of owners, family owners, private owners, not big developers or anything, that have been in the area, especially the Yonge and Wellesley area, for 50 years plus. We've been there since 1960. In fact, I have grown up in that area. I used to go to Jesse Ketchum's school from kindergarten to grade 8, which was on Bay and Davenport, and it's still there. So we used to walk along Bloor Street, down Yonge Street to my father's restaurant at Yonge and Wellesley. So we know the buildings one by one for many years and have watched the changes over the years. What I wanted to say is over the years, we have seen Yonge Street fall apart. There are a lot of old buildings, and the tenants they have attracted are not very high-end. They're having a very hard time paying their rents, and their businesses are struggling. We have lost ourselves several tenants because of these reasons. They could not pay the rent, and they have left. And it's really hard to maintain the buildings, and we are opposed to these restrictions. I'm going to touch on a few highlights from my letter. We are opposed to these restrictions for a lot of the same reasons as the previous two speakers just outlined. In fact, we used to go and shop in Mr. Hawkridge's shop years ago. These proposed restrictions could seriously decrease the value of our land substantially, and it affects any advancement or development in the area. In the last decade or so, Yonge Street in this area was full of dumpy stores and still is, and the buildings are in need of great repairs. So there is not much business in the area, even now. There has been some revitalization in the area, and this has occurred due to new development. Even if you go, whole blocks have been allowed to be demolished, and also this is not fair, because they have picked some areas where they allow development and some areas where they have not. The revitalization started from the Yonge Dundas area and has sort of moved upwards, but for some reason they stopped at College, and now they started this study above Bloor, and then they moved it to south of Bloor, which is, again, not fair and discriminatory. The old Bloor Street stores that we used to see walking when we were young are not there. Bloor has been redeveloped, as we all know. It's one of the best streets in the country. People come there, high-end shops, and they're well-known all over Canada and the States. They attract great tenants. So it's discriminatory to put these tough restrictions on taxpayers only in this area of Yonge Street. And we're wondering why just this area was singled out, when there are heritage value buildings north of Bloor and also south of College. Some owners in the study area have also received exemptions, and this is not fair, just because they put in their applications in a certain timeline. But the study has been going on for a few years, but they managed to get their license, their permits. For example, the Stolleries building was one that seemed to get it pretty quickly and knock it down, and that was of real historic value, and that was allowed to come down. And in fact, they moved the boundary to accommodate that. All our particular buildings are old, in serious need of repairs. Infrastructure is aging, and high costs are needed to maintain these buildings, which will have to be passed on to the tenants. As a result, costs will go up, and they will cause financial distress to existing businesses that are already struggling to survive. Many tenants are having a difficult time even at present. There's not enough people in the area to sustain the business, not enough shopping, and many tenants have left before their leases are even up. So it's easy for us to say that we want everything preserved as it was historically, but this comes with huge costs for the owners and tenants, which puts more pressure on the particular owners and the tenants who are trying to sustain themselves. The very strict impositions that are being placed on owners in the proposed study will increase the costs, and this will be passed on, and we'll have problems keeping the places rented. So we'll have a bunch of empty stores.
I'm going to have to get you to sum up just in one
Okay.
sentence.
Taxes in the area have also gone up, and this is also putting more pressure on. So if the tenants cannot maintain, there'll be an area in this part of Yonge Street which will be considered historical, or maybe if the vote's passed, but there will be a lot of empty stores, so the values go down even more. So
I'm going to have to cut you off there. My apologies. You're at 5 minutes and 30
We request
seconds.
that you reconsider.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much. Paul Farrelly? Hi there, Paul? Yep. Thanks, Andy.
Dedicate
Thanks very much. My name is Paul Farrelly, and I'm a nominator through the Church Wellesley Neighbourhood Association. But also I'm here today as the chair of the Toronto East York Community Preservation Panel. And I've come here often before saying that this panel should be set up, and be careful what you wish for, because now I'm the chair of it. I sit on the Toronto Preservation Board as chair of the Toronto East York Community Preservation Panel. And I have 4 vice chairs, one for each of the regions of Midtown, of West, of East, and of Downtown. And those chairs and our team of 15 people on the Community Preservation Panel are interested in working with you on heritage matters in your neighborhoods, in your areas. And we hope you will be a source of bodies for us in the Community Preservation Panel, so that we can double our numbers and bring together the people who are engaged in heritage matters across our district. That's not going to work? Okay. Okay. So we're on the ancient land of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and I want to mention this in the context of historic Yonge, because what a pretentious and ridiculous idea that the history that we're preserving here is all the history there is. There's a lot more history than we're preserving here. We have named 2 lanes in our neighborhood after the chiefs who signed the Toronto Purchase, Cheechak and Wabanose, and we will encourage all your districts to similarly recognize the First Peoples. The challenge in this district is that the first business improvement area that was created in Toronto was cherry-picked on Yonge Street, and all the good areas were put into downtown Yonge, and all the rest were left over. And this section of leftover Yonge Street between College and Charles is what is luckily the Heritage Conservation District, because if it had been active and it hadn't fallen away, its economic base hadn't fallen away when the Maple Leaf Gardens closed, you know, there'd be still people buying pizza there, and there'd be still lots of pizza shops, but they went through their period where they became dollar stores, and now they're cash money stores. And, you know, you heard from some of the owners. Some of them are absolute institutions in our city. But there are new landlords on Yonge Street. KingSett Capital owns a whole bunch of properties. And where we are today is part of a 2-pronged attempt to do something about it. The first being the area plan, the North Downtown Yonge planning framework that got put in place as OPA 183, which is at the moment in front of the OMB with a phalanx of the usual suspects. But our community has had to dig very deep to be at the table, but we are there with a representative, and we're going to, an expert witness, and we're going to protect the OPA 183. This is the other leg of the stool, what happens to the buildings, and this is a great study. It's a detailed study. It connects deep into the tissue of Yonge Street, of the city. As Ken Greenberg says, Yonge Street is the part in your hair. It's the part in the hair of Toronto. This has 20 architectural styles in a few blocks. 20 different architectural styles. It's nearly defines what Yonge Street is all this difference and rumble and connection, and pull it all together. So, of course, there's a date at the OMB, and it will be at the OMB where this gets decided. But your strong support of this is very important, and your strong support and diligence and support for heritage matters and getting us a little bit more, engaged, learn from each other, share our understanding, and most of all, share our history. Because basically, that is the cultural heritage value of what we're protecting here, and it will be protected for a long time to come.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Matlow.
Whenever I've heard HTCs being proposed, there are inevitably some property owners who come forward with, I think, very real fears about the outcome of an HDC. And as we heard today, we heard some of the property owners suggest that it'll be impossible to maintain the properties, that we'll see cash money places, that perhaps they'll have to shutter their doors and their windows. And we hear a lot of these fears. And clearly the fears are real, but from your experience, through your, just based on your knowledge, have many of these fears ever come through to fruition in the past? Have you seen shops close due to HDCs, or have you seen any net benefits due to preservation?
Well, the big advantage, or the big example is Queen West. This is a bit more complicated than Queen West, but Queen West was the first big commercial HCD, and it's a grand place. It's teeming with people every Saturday, every weekend. So, I understand the owners, but they had numerous times to engage in the process that we could have benefited from their point of view in the dialogue around this HCD. But really, when you think of, say, weatherproofing your building, you can get a grant for half the cost of weatherproofing your heritage building. Now, isn't that a better deal than you had yesterday? So I think it's overplayed, the fact that the heritage is going to, add complexity. It's adding a certain range. It means you can't go to Canadian Tire and get, a lintel or, but really and truly, it's the main street of the city, and, you should be proud to be on there. And, they've let it go to ratchet. And it's for so many simple things of cleaning windows. They'll pay the window cleaner $20 to clean the outside of the window, but they'll never clean the inside of the window, or they'll never clean the sign. So it's always looking like it's downbeat. And so it's up to the owners. I think that the heritage is a boon, and this is an opportunity for revitalization, among the other opportunities such as the downtown BIA coming up into this area now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, thank you very much. I can reassure you that no one feels the hair part analogy on Toronto's loss of heritage land like I do. Are there any other speakers to the item?
Mr. Chair, I resemble that comment.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public to speak?
I actually hadn't come here to speak to this. I'm just waiting for my item to come up. But Councillor Matlow raised the issue of the Queen Street Heritage District, and I was very intimately involved in securing the funding for that, and worked closely with Antonio and his team on the development of site. And actually, it was a little bit of deja vu listening to debate and listening to the objections, because none of that has actually come to fruition on the strip. If anything, it's more revitalized. The new developments that have gone in have actually enhanced the quality of the street. And so I'm really here to say that I'm a big supporter of HCDs, and I think they should be utilized as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers to the item? Yes? If you could, come on forward.
My name is Karen Jovier. I've spoken before on matters of heritage. It's of strong personal interest. The iconic Canadian folk singer Joni Mitchell, in her famous song Circle Game, sings, "We're captive in the carousel of time. We can't return. We can only look behind from where we came." It's historic buildings that help us look behind from where we came. These buildings give us a glimpse of a time past, a different life and pace. They remind us of very different architectural styles, some so different from what we have now that we can only marvel and delight in their unique historical features. However, the citizens of Toronto and the visitors who come to Toronto will be robbed of this experience, seeing and appreciating and going into the buildings dating back to the late 1800s, if we don't take steps to protect our heritage. This is what the North Downtown Yonge Urban Design Guidelines report tries to do, to protect the heritage of a major Toronto corridor, Yonge Street. Who wants to walk down a street that feels like a canyon? Look at Bay Street. We don't want another Bay Street to occur on Yonge Street, and that's what will happen if these old buildings get knocked down. We want to be able to see the historic low buildings, to enjoy the diverse ethnic restaurants that line the street, to browse the small boutiques and bookshops and boutiques, the costume stores, the art galleries, the serendipity and colorfulness of small shops offering unusual items. So I actually disagree with some of the earlier comments made about the seedy stores. Maybe there's a few of them, but every area has a few of them. There's a lot of very colorful and interesting little shops along Yonge Street, and they won't be there. We'll just get the chain stores if those old buildings come down. If we raise more old buildings, they cannot be brought back or easily replicated. Look at the civic outcry there was when the old Stollery building was demolished at Yonge and Bloor, without any thought of preserving some of the fine architectural details. People in Toronto care about these things. We need to protect heritage, and as quickly as possible before developers line the streets with condos, and there will be no sense of history or even a sunny side of the street, because it'll all be in shadows. Just more anonymous tall buildings without soul or character. Who will want to take a tour that celebrates Yonge Street's rich musical history with clubs such as the Colonial, the Brown Derby, the Nickelodeon, frequented by members of the band, Ronnie Hawkins and other famous musicians, when there's nothing but canyons of condos? Those music tours will not happen. We should extend the historic area right down to Dundas, to include Elm Street, and to make up for the stretches already lost, like Yonge and Maitland, and the areas, some of the areas proposed for redevelopment, like 480 to 494 Yonge Street, where the fire tower is. That would be a real shame to lose that stretch. We also need to go at least a block in off Yonge Street to include some of the old buildings on those side streets. Quebec City, I don't know if many of you have been to Quebec City. Many of the side lanes are full of little restaurants and quaint shops, and that's the sort of feeling we should be getting along Yonge Street as well. And I agree with some of the property owners that it may be hard to keep their properties up, but I think it's very important that we look at ways of doing that. If we can find money from private sponsors to decorate areas underneath the Gardiner, we should be able to find money to help with preserving heritage along Yonge Street, because it's a central corridor. And I can sympathize with property owners there, but I think we have to look at private-public sponsorships and some heritage grants so that some of these property owners with concerns can get money to fix up their properties, so they're just not lost to more condo development, because we'll definitely will ruin Yonge Street if we keep going the way we are. There's been sections already raised, and I think it's very important to try and hang on to the heritage buildings and to give the owners some support in being able to do this and to beautify Yonge Street. We can add planters, we can add gas lights, we can bring more tourists to the area. The dollar's low, we'll get American tourists, but we have to give them a nice area that they can walk in.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to cut you off there. Are there any questions of the deputant? No? Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, are there any councillors to question staff? No? Any councillors to speak? Councillor Wong-Tam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. I'm going to move the staff recommendations and the recommendations from the Preservation Board, if there were any. But really, it's really the staff recommendations that I want to bring everyone's attention to. We've heard a wide range of opinions expressed today, many of them with very intimate knowledge of this section of Yonge Street, what we know as sort of the north section of Yonge Street, just south of Bloor and just north of College. And I want to tell you that this conversation about creating a HCD plan for this district goes way back, even before the conversation that was held by the CWNA and the BCCA, who were the nominators and the big supporters of the area. But it actually goes back to days of Jane Beecroft, who's here today, a noted Toronto historian. And in my 2010 election, Jane tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "You need to help us pay attention to what's happening on Yonge Street. This is going to be absolutely crucial for the future discussions to come." There has been very little attention paid to this section of Yonge Street, and I want to note that it's not necessarily because the community didn't care. We just weren't organized, but now we are organized, and I want to note that without the leadership of Jane Beecroft and Connie Langille and Paul Farley and many others who are in the room who haven't spoken, we would not have this plan before us today. And it was not an easy journey coming to today's report. And the journey had a lot to do with which section of Yonge Street do we try to put a heritage lens over? How do we find the funding? Because these things are not necessarily inexpensive, they're actually very expensive. And as you have noted, the staff report says that the process was 3 years long. I would argue that the process that began was closer to 6.5, 7 years in length and language and deliberation in the community as they try to organize themselves, leading up to a place where they can present a proposal to preservation staff to say, now can we start this HCD plan process? And so it actually is a much longer conversation that involves so many other critical players. I want to note that there has been some comments about the participation, that the Yonge Street North, as we know it here, is derelict, or it's not taken care of. There are a number of property owners that spoke up today, and I thank you for coming up, and your lawyers who spoke up on your behalf, perhaps, and the correspondence that has been sent in. I also want to point out that you have 42 million people walking up and down Yonge Street. You've got significant subway lines unloading onto Yonge Street. We are the busiest subway corridor, one of the busiest in North America at this point. I can't imagine a neighborhood that's primed for success. And there are other smaller towns that are doing everything they can to try to respect the cultural and historical value and heritage value of their shopping downtown districts. And their strategy is actually very similar to the strategy that's here today, is to embrace the cultural, historical past, and then to look forward into the future and how to integrate new development while respecting the existing urban landscape. It is not about sterilizing a site. Development, as we know it, will continue on Yonge Street. And there are other examples in the city that are much closer, so we don't have to look to smaller towns as they're grappling with try to revitalize their neighborhoods. We can see successful models right here. St. Lawrence Market has an HCD. They're doing just fine. And it's one of the best neighborhoods, I would say, to live, work, study, and play. And we also have Yorkville, Hazelton, HCD. Many of you have referenced how successful Yorkville is. Well, guess what? We've got 14 development applications in Yorkville. They're all very tall towers. They all have to respect the HCD plan that is in place. And development isn't stopping, but they are being forced to be respectful to the existing urban architectural language that exists on the streets. That is not necessarily a recipe for disaster. That is a recipe for success. We're going to have more guarantees of how we are going to inform development as we move forward. Without the HCD plan, we didn't have that. With the HCD plan, we will have that. And I'm very mindful that we are probably going to see a number of property owners, including lawyers who represent property owners offshore, that are going to appeal this plan and probably take us to the Ontario Municipal Board and maybe tie us up for another 2.5, 3 years. So you'll do everything you can to undermine our process that involve the collaboration of community and city partners. And you would have been invited to many of those community meetings, invited to many of those workshops to participate and to get involved on how to make this neighborhood a better place. And you're going to have said to us, and I know this because some of you have said this to me already, is that we were objecting all along. We've asked you to participate and get involved all along. And from the get-go, you said, no, I want to sell my property. It's not fair. So what's not fair? Is it not fair that we have about $30 million that I have earmarked to invest into Yonge Street for the Yonge Street revitalization process? That's money that we have put aside on behalf of the community to make Yonge Street a better street in the future, to make it more pedestrian-friendly, to make the pedestrian experience even better than it is today. Bloor Yorkville had to pay close to $20 million for the granite pavers and what you now deem as a dynamic and incredible street, which it is. No doubt it is. One of the best ones in Canada. They're mortgaged to do that. I've done that for you. If there's no incentive to invest in Yonge Street, then match our contributions, because Councillor McConnell is going to do the same thing on her side of Yonge Street. So if you think that the City of Toronto is not doing enough to help Yonge Street, then put $30 million on the table and say, Councillor, I match and raise you one. Because that's what we're going to do with the local community to make the street a better place. And it's actually going to be made a better place, not just for us today, because there's a very good chance that this street is actually going to be made a better place and reclaim its cultural significance in the City of Toronto as Toronto's cultural main street. I'm going to finish with this. The HCD, the Historic Yonge Street Plan, meets the requirements of the Ontario Heritage Act and all other provincial legislation, including all statutory regulations for notification, consultation, study, and content. And over the past 3 years, this is the official process, once it enters City Hall, staff and the consultant team undertook additional community and stakeholder consultation to inform the direction and content of the plan. You take this plan to the board, we will fight you tooth and nail every step of the way until we win, and the community wins and the City of Toronto wins. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wong-Tam. Councillor McConnell.
Well, I think, first of all, from the claps, I think we all have to acknowledge the work of my colleague. Councillor Wong-Tam has worked hard at this. She's done it from the moment that she stepped inside this building. And I believe that she has done an incredible job, as have the city staff and the consultants. You know, there was some discussion here about why does it stop at Gerrard Street? And I remember not so long ago discussions by property owners in the Old Town. Why did it stop at Esplanade? At some point, you have to draw a line in the sand in order to do a study. But what I want to assure everybody of is that this study is about a district. But south of this district are many, many, many designated buildings that are coming back to charm us. Temperance Street is being redone, and south of Temperance is going to be quite remarkable. And so how we stitch some of these things together, very important. The Hudson Bay Company, we've had a lot of discussion about valet parking, but really that building is iconic. And the Hudson Bay Company was able to save it by doing something different inside it. Although I understand Councillor Matlow's little girl Molly could only afford some free water when she went.
Point of privilege, I could only afford.
I thought you'd have her out to work already.
She's doing fine.
She's not in school yet. But also, you know, if you start to move down, you'll see some really big building blocks. The Hockey Hall of Fame and the fabulous Galleria and the way that that's being put together. The Sony Center and the designation there and the revitalization that we're hoping to do along Yonge Street. And then getting right down to the waterfront, where finally we don't have Captain John's, but we do have the Jack Layton Ferry Docks Terminal and a pretty remarkable suggestion for how we will re-envision that. These are important pieces that pull things together. A planner once told me that he had walked, I think, from Gerrard South and on the weekend, and had pictures of 439 lights that were out on Yonge Street. You know, this is the longest street in Ontario. It is one of the most beautiful parts of our city, and is really also the spine and the backbone of our city. So it deserves a little attention. And I think the community and Councillor Wong Tam have given it that. I think the staff and the consultants have put this into a really strong document. And I would say that this document will stand up to anybody in the Ontario Municipal Board. And I want to thank them for doing that, because I think that although it may take a little bit of time, Councillor Wong Tam, it's well worth the effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McConnell. Are there any other members of committee to speak? Seeing none, there's been a request for a recorded vote. All those in favor, Councillor Davis, Councillor Mihevc, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Cressy, Councillor Layton, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Fragadakis, Councillor Perks, Councillor McConnell, Councillor Matlow, Councillor McMahon, Councillor Bylaws. Thank you very much. We'll return now, that motion carries. We'll return now to item 14.2. Did you have any, no, sorry, 14.2. We're just, most of them are going to be pretty quick as we go through them. It's good now. It's good now. Okay, so at 14.2, final report 4046, a whole bunch of McCall and Stephanie Street. To speak, Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I have some amendments, and I'll be moving the staff recommendations as amendments if they can be put on the screen. We're returning to an item that we heard deputations, just to remind those around the table, at earlier this morning regarding a site on McCall Street, it's a site that has been in the works for a number of years with consultations with the community dating back, well, I'm the third councillor on this file now. It's also an important site in a mixed-use neighborhood. We have the Grange Community Association, Grange Park, OCAD, the AGO, St. George the Martyr Church, University Settlement, amongst others, all directly impacted by what's being proposed. And all of those stakeholders have been actively involved, both in the final report and working with my office and the applicant, as well as with a number of the amendments. We've tried to accomplish a number of things at the end of the day with the proposed development here. Good planning principles, first and foremost, whether it's the transition to the neighborhood and the park, both from a height and a massing standpoint. The notion of family-size units, always a hallmark in Ward 20. I'm pleased to see in this report that there's actually a size stipulated for those family-size units as well, more than 1,000 square feet, so that as we build 3 bedrooms, we get real family-size units. The improvements to the public realm, the development of a POP space, improving community services, and a commitment to equity. We've tried to do a lot with this site. There were a number of concerns over the years. We've sought to address them. The height has been adjusted and the massing to maintain OCAD and the AGO as the prominent structures in the neighborhood, as well as to take the shadows and reduce the shadows off historic Grange Park, and certainly in relationship to University Settlement and St. George the Martyr Church. We've created, and with the tremendous work I want to flag of urban design at the city here, a POP space at the corner of McCall and Stephanie. So the actual massing and design of the building was changed to create a POP space, not just for the public realm opportunities, though that's often what's associated with POPs, but rather to protect the view of St. George the Martyr Church from McCall Street. So a different use of POPs, not just the public realm enhancement, but also protecting important views. That's a 200 square meter park. There will be a 3-story gallery as part of this proposal, a 14-story building, but also a 3-story gallery. Concerns have been raised that what happens if in the zoning here the gallery isn't built at the same time. So we've done a couple things. This is zoning specific in that it is only for a gallery. The height and massing of what's approved here cannot be changed, so it will always be a gallery. And if the gallery is not built within the year at the same construction timeline as the other, we've put in place a condition here that a public plaza needs to be constructed on that site so it doesn't sit there vacant, and that needs to be done with the local community, relevant staff in my office, hoarding for public art, Stephanie Street changes, easements to maintain pedestrian public access, protection of lights into the church, as well as a construction management plan. We always say we need to do construction management plans. One of the things we're trying to get better at is how can we strengthen that plan so that either we have all the details or as many of them as possible at the time of rezoning. In the Section 37 on the construction management plan, we have a number of those details. Finally, there is a requirement here that the applicant make all efforts to work with the church prior to the bills being enacted to consider their important issues as it relates to construction lighting in the parking lot. I'll close just by saying that the community benefits here that have been negotiated are not insignificant. $200,000 for affordable housing, that's 20% of this Section 37. $200,000 for the development of a neighborhood green plan developed with the local residents association, and $600,000 towards community services and parkland. It's been a tough site. It's been a lot of work. It's fair to say that it is never perfect. In fact, it should never be perfect. We always need to strive to make it better. But I think on a dynamic street in a mixed-use neighborhood, we've come a long way to, at the end of the day, building a neighborhood, not just allowing density to go up. And with that, I'll move my amendments and the amended staff recommendations.
Are there any other councillors to speak? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendments and the staff report, all those opposed, that carries. We're at 14.5, inclusion of the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, 58 Atlantic Avenue. Ward 14, Councillor Perks. Are there any members of the public to speak to this item? No?
I'll just move it.
All those in favor? Opposed? That item carries.
Point of privilege, Chair. Point of privilege. If I could just do an introduction to, we have a celebrity amongst us. Mayor Cooper, Sandra Cooper from Collingwood. The Mayor of Collingwood is just here for the Ontario Good Roads Convention. So I just wanted to introduce her. My hometown.
Next up is TE 14.6, inclusion of the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, 15 Duncan Street. I have a Mary Flynn Guglietti. Hello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm actually here on 2 items this morning, and they're actually physically joined at one point. So I'm wondering whether or not we should, and through you, Mr. Chair, I'm looking to the ward councillor, Councillor Cressy, whether it would be the preference of the committee for me to address the 2 items simultaneously, because many of the issues I'm going to raise are the same for both of them, and in doing so, that might save a little bit of time for the committee. So I'm in your hands, sir.
Are there any questions on to the deputant? Seeing none? On the 2 items, sure.
It's item 6 and item 9. Same lawyer for both,
Please.
and they're adjoined.
Go right ahead.
And the buildings are physically joined. Thank you very much, through you, Councillor Layton, to Councillor Cressy. You'll note, with respect to the 2 letters that I've sent on behalf of both of the landowners, that neither of them received notice with respect to this meeting, nor did they receive the actual reports that were prepared. So this came up as a very last-minute And I received a call from the Registered Nurses Association, which is the owner of 158 Pearl, which is item 14.9, really not understanding what this was all about, what the impacts would be, and what the significance of the report was. So upon being retained, the first thing that I did was I wrote a letter to the committee requesting a deferral. Now, we're asking for a 1-month deferral, and the purpose of that deferral is so that my clients can understand what this is about, so that we can, get our ducks lined up and that the issues are understood by everyone involved. And if I might say, I was very touched by the very passionate speech of Councillor Wong Tam, where she talked about the community working together. So when we're dealing with historical buildings and when we're dealing with historical districts, it's a two-way street. There's the owners of the land, there's the community, and there's city council. And everyone should work together. And none of my clients have said that they're not prepared to work with the community or with council. And quite frankly, what they're really asking for is a deferral for 1 month just so they can better understand things. And if I could give you an example of why they need some assistance. If you look at the report that was written with respect to 15 Duncan Street, it makes mention of 158 Pearl Street and says, the reason why we have to list this building right now is because there's an application, a development application pending on 158 Pearl Street. Now, interestingly enough, when you go to the 158 Pearl Street report, it says there's a pending application. Now, the author is the same author for both reports. The reports are written on the same date. So how could there be a mix of information where there's an allegation in one report that there's an actual application filed, when in the other report they talk about it being a pending application? Like, that's just inaccurate. But it's the same author wrote the same reports on the same days. So it starts questioning the accuracy of the reports in front of you. Now, with respect to 15 Duncan, our client has not undertaken a historical study. But with respect to 158 Pearl, the Registered Nurses Association, they have undertaken a study. And they're not saying that this is not a historical building. What they're saying is there's been new development in parts of it. Certain walls have been taken down, and perhaps maybe it's only the facade. So the report seems to have different information than their own consultants. So there's inaccuracies. So the difficulty that we have with the very limited time that we had is we've got inaccuracies right in the same reports written by the same author, and we've got misinformation. And what we're just asking for on the two, because they are joined and they should be considered at the same time, is that we have a month so that we can look at this with our clients. Again, as Councillor Wong Tam said, to make the historical work, it has to be a joint effort of the landowners, of the community, and of the council. And asking for a 1 month deferral is not unreasonable. In fact, it's fair. The owner of these buildings is going to be an important component of whatever happens vis-a-vis the historical. And without their participation, because they feel that they've been dealt with fairly, that isn't going to happen. Or they're not going to be coming to the table thinking that they're being dealt with fairly and reasonably. So it is simply a request for a 1 month deferral to your next community council meeting. And the other thing I'd like to point out is that under the Heritage Act, there's different types of designations. There's Part 4s, and then there's also the Part 5s. The Part 5s are the district designations. And quite frankly, that's already ongoing in this area. And perhaps at the end of the day, that is the more appropriate designation, because that deals with how it relates to the community, maybe only deals with the facades. And so I would submit to you that the request for the deferral is a very reasonable and fair request. It doesn't delay the matter. There is no pending application right now. There is no application, which is wrong in the report, and a 1 month deferral does not impact or affect any of the things with respect to the Part 5 or the Part 4. And I am speaking for two.
And I've been a bit generous with time. Are there any questions of the applicant, of the deputant? Councillor Cressy.
Thanks, and I'll make my questions related to both 15 Duncan and 158 Pearl, as I know you're representing both. Are either building currently on the market for sale?
As a matter of fact, with respect to the Registered Nurses Association, they have an agreement of purchase and sale, and at the time that they were doing their due diligence, there were letters that were sent to the city asking whether or not it was listed or designated, whether it was a Part 4 or Part 5, and actually have a copy of the letters that they received saying, in fact, there is no designation and no listing.
So there is an agreement for a purchase of sale on one of those two properties?
Absolutely.
And are you aware of potential developers or buyers having had meetings, pre-application meetings with planning staff to discuss those possible applications?
Through you, Councillor Layton, to Councillor Cressy, yes, I am aware that there are those meetings, but as you can appreciate, whenever there's going to be an application submitted to the city, under the Planning Act, you have to have pre-consultation meetings and submit a number of reports. That's not going to happen in a month.
Yeah, but would it be fair to say that the line that there is a pending development application could relate to the fact that there is a purchase of sale and a possible development partner having been engaged in pre-application meetings with planning staff? Could that be what the pending development application line is referring to?
If I may, I don't think until a property has sold that you can call it pending. They don't even own the property. They've made inquiries. That's the best.
Okay.
Now,
That's an interpretation, though.
But if I could, sir, if you look at 15 Duncan, what 15 Duncan report says, there is an application on 158, and that's just wrong. And by the same author, written the same day.
Okay. And then just the final, I understand the desire for a deferral, which I will not be supporting or moving. I understand the desire for deferral on the basis of further information. What specific concerns related to this listing do the two clients of yours have? I understand the desire for more information, but as it relates to the listing, what concerns do they have?
Thank you. With respect to the concerns that they have, it's the inaccuracies in the report. As I said, with respect to 158 Pearl, they do have their own report, and I actually have it right here. And that report is a fairly thick report, and it talks about what they believe to be of historical significance, which is the facade. Whereas if you read the report that was prepared by staff, it's different. It's not. There are inaccuracies. Now, I don't know which is right, but that month would give us time to understand that, to meet with staff and say, perhaps maybe you need to amend your report because what you're trying to designate or list as significant may in fact not be completely accurate.
Okay.
Maybe it shouldn't be the whole building. With respect to 15 Duncan,
No, that's fine, thank you.
they have not had an opportunity to do their own independent historical report, but a landowner should be allowed to do that before a report that puts it on the list basically seals in time what is alleged to be historical.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions of the deputant? No? Thank you. We're still on 14.6. Any other members of the public to speak to this item? Seeing none, Councillor Cressy. Questions of staff?
Just very briefly, and on 14.6, so this is on 15 Duncan, to Heritage Preservation Services staff, on what basis, in your professional opinion, does this building merit listing on the Heritage Register?
Through the chair, as you can see in the attachment 3, the statement of significance, with a thorough outline and understanding that this building from 1903, it's not only worthy merit for inclusion for all aspects of cultural heritage, be it design, historical, and architectural, it's also a property to which we have noted from the very beginning from our Heritage Conservation District that it's a contributing property. So on those bases that, as outlined, and I should say that our staff reports for the research and evaluation, our staff have been preparing these reports for the last 20, 25 years. They do extensive research at the archives and have a good understanding of the provincial regulation and the criteria for worthy for inclusion.
In questions have been raised related to notice to the property owners of when a report is coming forward. Can you speak to what notice is provided from Heritage Preservation Services?
With respect to this report, I actually spoke with one of the shareholders of the property. The notification was sent to their property manager, care of their company. He noted that that material was not passed to him until a day or two later. And so I've added his individual name as an interested party, but we use the notification through IBMS as who is registered as the property owner.
Okay. And then just to planning staff, there's been questions related to why the line pending development application. Could you clarify that, please?
Councillor, I think it probably is better for us to...
Sure, please. Thank you.
Yes, it's our understanding that there's a lot of development activity in the area, and we have had conversations with different people, which, as you know, is a confidential process. But we are concerned that these significant buildings could be subject to development without appropriate conservation protections.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you very much. To speak, Councillor Cressy.
Sure. So on item 615 Duncan Street, this is in fact in the King Spadina district, where we are in the midst of an unprecedented period of growth and change in an area that has immense and historic value. The buildings we're talking about here, and there's two of them we're dealing with today, were all built in the early 1900s after the Great Fire, when King Spadina went through a period where it became an industrial and warehouse district. These are historic buildings, not just for their previous use, but also the architecture that they employed, and you can see in the reports that information. The intention, as we know with our heritage listing, does not freeze buildings in time. It is not incompatible with proposals for development, but rather it is to ensure that our professional heritage staff have the time and the ability to monitor, review, and recommend important and critical heritage preservation components if any applicant comes forward. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. That is not incompatible with property owners utilizing their property rights to seek to do a minor variance or a rezoning. And it is for those reasons that I am pleased to support these, and certainly to the two built property owners, if they wish to change their buildings in the future, I look forward to chatting with them about that, as do our heritage staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other councillors to speak? No, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.7, inclusion of the Toronto Heritage Registrar of 46 Spadina Avenue. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? No. Any questions of staff? None. Councillor Cressy.
Move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.8, inclusion of the City of Toronto Heritage Register and intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 485 King Street West, Ward 20. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? No. Councillor Cressy.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.9, inclusion on the City of Toronto Heritage Register, 158 Pearl Street. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Yes. Oh, if you could just push the button in front of you just to make sure that, great.
Nancy Campbell, Director of Finance, Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. I would just like to follow up on our council's comments and request of the councillors the opportunity for the RNAO to have our own journey towards a staff report that preserves and addresses the heritage aspects of our property.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? No? Thank you. Any questions of staff? No? Councillor Cressy to speak.
Well, thank you. This is the building in front of us here is 158 Pearl Street. We heard an applicant, not the applicant, a representative for the owner of this building speak, and we just heard a representative for the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario speak. We have an important and critical heritage building here. It is being deemed to have significant heritage value, which again is not incompatible with development if that is put forward. I understand that the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario is concerned with this report. I think it's fair to say, like everybody in this room, I value deeply the important work of the nurses and the contribution they make in the city and this province. But the work of heritage preservation does in no way prevent the nurses' work from carrying on. It does also not, I understand concerns, and I've received the correspondence, that will this impact the future financial viability of a transfer of ownership of this property? And I guess my bottom line here is, first of all, heritage, the ability to review, monitor, and recommend changes from a heritage context is important city building work. And what goes for the RNAO goes for every property owner in this district. There is no changes to how we assess heritage value. And I will be moving the staff recommendations and look forward to working closely with the RNAO in the weeks and months going forward. Thank you.
All those in favor of the staff recommendations? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.10, alterations to a designated heritage property, 160 Gerrard Street East. I don't see Councillor Wong Tam in the room. If we could, because we're going to be going through these pretty quick. Okay. She might want to move it. Let's hold it down. 14.10. TE 14.11, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 826 to 834 Yonge Street. Okay, well, oh, she's both of them, yeah. And if Councillor McConnell's out there, can you just grab her too, please? Thank you. Okay. TE 14.10, alterations to designated heritage property 160 Gerrard Street East. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, any questions of staff? No. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm moving the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.11, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 826 to 834 Yonge Street, including 2 Cumberland Street. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? No. Are there any questions of staff? None. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to move the recommendations in the staff report.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Oh, great. TE 14.12, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 351 Lakeshore Boulevard East, Ward 28. Councillor, are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, Councillor McConnell.
Moving the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 15.13, request for heritage evaluation, 635 Queen Street East, Ward 30. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? No. Councillor Fletcher.
Mr. Chair, I will move the staff recommendation.
All those in favor? Opposed? That item carried.
I'm receiving the report.
On receiving the report. TE 14.14, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and inclusion on the Heritage Register, 639, 641, 643, 651, 653, and 655 Queen Street East. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, any questions of staff? None. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. I didn't speak on Councillor Wong Tam's Heritage Conservation District on Yonge Street, but I would just like to draw the attention of the members to these incredible buildings on Queen Street East. It is truly, I call it the old growth forest in the east end of heritage buildings. They are stunning. So many of them are intact. They are, I have my microphone on. They are often used in movie sets. They are, well, there's just so many of them in one place, and they've not been altered. This is part of an ongoing quest to get the Heritage Conservation District in place, but with the large development that we passed here, I guess 2 months ago with the streetcar redevelopment, because it's such a large development, it's very important to protect buildings right away in anticipating there will be more development applications. So this is this part from the bridge over to Broadview, and I would like to thank staff for moving so quickly on that and preparing these, and move very happily TE 14.14.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And the other side of the street, TE 14.15, inclusion of the City of Toronto Heritage Register 650, 666, 668, 670, 682 to 688, Queen Street East, Ward 30. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Nope. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. I will also repeat my remarks and just say that on this side of the street, at the corner of Broadview and Queen, is the famous, what's called Joe's, and is currently the Broadview Hotel, and is being refurbished to its former glory, Dingman's Hall, Broadview Hotel. As Queen Street, as you all know, was the main way of getting out of the city and getting out to the eastern parts of our province. So very happy to also move the staff report here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.16, inclusion on the Heritage Register 685, Queen Street East, Ward 30. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? None. Councillor Fletcher.
Happily move the staff recommendation here.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We just reached our 11 o'clock items. Yay. TE 14.17, request for fence exemption 40 Hillside Drive, Ward 29. I have a Carolyn Moss to speak. If there are any other members of the public who wish to speak to this item, if you could go and approach the clerks over there, that'd be great. Carolyn Moss. Hi there. Well, we all have 5 minutes and the clock is to my right.
Hello? Okay, great. Carolyn Moss from Moss Sund Architects, agent for the owners, David and Beth Cuddy. They own the property at 40 Hillside Drive. We've designed additions and renovations to their home, including landscaping and a pool. The project underwent all the required approvals from the TRCA, Ravine, on Natural Features, Committee of Adjustment. We've got a building permit and construction's underway. One of the final hurdles is to request a fence bylaw exemption. They're on a ravine lot. They're sort of caught between the existing building and the TRCA setback. And so 2 walls of the house form part of the swimming pool enclosure. And we're requesting permission to have 3 operable windows in that swimming pool enclosure. One of the operable windows is at 8'9" above the floor, so it would be very difficult to access. And 2 of the windows will be protected by glass guards. The remainder of the swimming pool enclosure is all in compliance with the swimming pool enclosure bylaws. Pardon? Right, so the remaining 2 sides are all in compliance. So I'm not sure if you've seen the images, but
Yep. We've got, if you put them on as if you're looking at them, perfect.
so this is just showing the house part. There's a glass, can you see my finger again? Let me put the map, the plan. Okay, this large rectangle is the pool. This is the standard swimming pool enclosure that goes around to here. And then this is the house.
All right. Questions of staff or questions of the deputant?
What you're saying is there isn't a fence between the house and the pool.
That's correct, yes.
So that's the exemption you're seeking?
Yeah, where you're not permitted to have an operable window within the swimming pool enclosure?
No, I'm talking about a fence, a fence separating the pool from the house.
Right, but where there's no doors into that pool area, you're required,
Operable window.
so any doors onto the patio are outside of the swimming pool enclosure. Inside of the swimming pool enclosure, there's only windows.
I see.
And we're just
So
asking.
there is no access except through a window.
Correct. Correct. Yes, so there is a window up here, which is 8'9" above the floor,
Okay.
so you couldn't get to it. Okay? And then there's two windows, one here,
Curious jump.
yeah, and one here, where both of the windows come below 3 feet, so about 2 feet above the floor, but they're both protected by guards.
So how do you get to the pool? Where's the entrance?
Over here, which is outside of the swimming pool enclosure, there's a glass fence, so it doesn't show up very well, that goes between where the doors are and the swimming pool area.
What's the bylaw?
Okay, thank you.
What's the
The
bylaw?
bylaw is that you can't have an operable window within the swimming pool enclosure.
I see.
And there used to, there are precedents from previous decisions where there were operable windows, and it seems the bylaw changed at some point, because it used to be you could have it restricted from opening or have a guard, and that seemed to be permissible, but now it's not a permissible thing. You have to come and request the exemption.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this item? No. Any councillors, any questions of staff? No. To speak, Councillor Fragedakis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to move to grant the proposed access protection exemption to 40 Hillside Drive with the provision it is to maintain all protective guards and attributes in place. I've met with Carolyn. She's walked me through this application. I think the alternatives that she has proposed are satisfactory, and I ask for your support.
Are there any other councillors to speak? No. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? That carries.
Thank you very much.
TE 14.18, request for offense exemption to Toronto Municipal Code Chapter 447, 76 Hiltz Avenue. I have a Sarah Jennings to speak. Hi there.
Hi.
Just have a seat. Make sure the light's on in front of you, and I'll start your time when you're ready.
We had a higher fence constructed after our neighbors installed security lights and a video audio camera to their shed that looked directly into our kitchen and over our deck through sliding glass doors. In response to our concerns, Police Constable Prochotko, 55 Division, visited the house, and although she agreed that it's on. I'm just a bit nervous.
Don't be.
So the police constable that visited our house, she agreed that the camera did overlook our property and into our kitchen through sliding glass doors. However, she said that this was not illegal because there was no expectation of nudity on our back deck and in our kitchen. So our solution was to raise the height of our fence. Well, this picture was taken standing in our kitchen. Can you point to the camera? That camera, I don't know if you can see it, looks directly into our kitchen. This is our new fence, which is just high enough to block the camera. And I don't feel we're setting a precedent in terms of fence heights in the neighborhood because many of the adjacent neighboring properties have the same height. And in fact, the neighbor who launched this complaint, her fence is just as high as the one that she's complaining against.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? No? Are there any other members of the, is there a question? No. Any other members of the public who wish to speak to this item? None? Questions of staff? No? Councillor Fletcher to speak.
Thank you. I'm going to move to approve the fence exemption and note that the piece of fence that's on the other side is exactly the same height as 7.7, so the precedent's already been set.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries.
Thank you for coming.
Congratulations. You can keep your fence. The next item up is TE 14.19, request for fence exemption 59 Glenwood Crescent. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, any questions of staff? None. Councillor Davis.
I have a motion. And that's to grant, it's kind of a compromise, to grant the fence exemption for the side yard portion that is on private property only, and then direct a second notice be given for the fence that is in the front yard. That takes down the fence, and I don't need to give any further details.
Any other councillors to speak? No. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.20, request for a fence exemption to the Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 447, 80 Dixon Avenue, Ward 32. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, Councillor McMahon.
Yes, thank you very much. I move to grant the fence exemption.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. TE 14.20.21, appeal of the denial of a Boulevard Cafe permit located at 1430 Dundas Street West on commercial frontage and Gladstone Avenue frontage. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Nope. All right. Councillor Bylaws.
Thank you. I have a motion that we've put together with neighbors. So the property owners have consulted the community extensively. I have a long petition of support, and with the owners and the neighbors, we've agreed on the following conditions. And I'd like to seek your approval to have the patio granted.
Are there any other councillors to speak? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.22, refusal of an application for a Boulevard Cafe permit located on the commercial frontage of 651 College Street. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this? I don't think there are, because it's in Ward 19. And I have a motion to approve the patio subject to a handful of conditions. And just say that it's a really cute place. So all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.23. Looking at you, Councillor Cressy. Refusal of a Boulevard Cafe permit application for an extension located at 191 College Street, Henry Street flankage. I have two speakers here. George Trainee, son of George Trainee. Do you want to come and make a deputation? Sure. And if you could just state your name for the record, and then you'll have 5 minutes, and I'll start your time. The clock's to my right.
Thank you very much. My name is Enrico Trainee, son of George Trainee. I've grown up on Henry Street for 35 years now. It's where I was born. I've seen this property go through many different incarnations, from a Druxy's originally to now a few different pubs. The current property, the current owner of it at this point has been, I think most of the neighborhood would feel, a pretty negative influence in the area. He has not interacted with the street positively. Last year, he tried to start putting things on the side and use it as storage, and start putting things in the area that is what he's looking for as a patio. I'm assuming to start a precedent that it could be used as a patio in the future, that Mr. Cressy's office took care of very nicely. I appreciate that. And as well, ongoing, they continue to put stuff outside of their existing patio. They interfere with the sidewalk, as is, I'm going to just put here in a way that can hopefully be seen. The farthest point here, you can see the sign that's shown right now up close is a Subway and another store farther down the street. The patio that they have they put little A-frame signs basically where it completely interferes with the sidewalk. And I think it's just indicative of showing that they're not a very caring or good neighbor for the neighborhood. And I would look that they don't have a larger patio than what they have is existing.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? No? I have another deputant, Ted Reed. Sir Ted Reed? Hi there.
I'm a longtime resident of Henry Street as well. I've seen many iterations of pubs, and they all end up with some aggravation or other. The present patio that exists goes right down to the edge of the sidewalk. It's elevated. The sidewalk is, what, 3.5 feet wide. There's another 1 foot or so that's paved. It is, when smokers come out, half a dozen smokers come out, they block the sidewalk essentially. This particular pub is new, so I don't know that that is going to be a huge problem, but it continues. We've had pub owners, sport club owners, music. It always ends up with some sort of problem. They don't last long. My concern is that adding to the side street just creates more noise for me as a property owner, and I don't see that it adds anything to what they have already. It's not that I don't approve of the pub itself. The pub is fine, the way it's situated right now, but I don't want them to have an extension on Henry Street.
Okay. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much. Are there any questions of staff? Any other members of the public to speak? Oh, sorry. I didn't have it on my sheet here, but.
My last name is Wharton, Philip Wharton, W-H-A-R-T-O-N. I'm a resident at 70 Henry Street. First of all, I'm going to give a little history, especially if we're dealing with the Heritage Board today. That was the original home of the Royal Canadian Institute. They're wonderful neighbours for many, many years, nicely landscaped, very quiet. Subsequently, there was a move made, and I believe to Carlton Street. 1849, they were founded, the Royal Canadian Institute. Druxies were the ones that took it over. They, without any permission, they created their patio. They elevated it to a certain dimension, which one can see right now. They were instructed to take it down, subsequently not. Then ownership changed, and as you've heard, change. I'm opposed to it for numerous reasons. I'll cite some of them. There has been LBO and also city ruling that they must close at 10 o'clock the Henry Street flankage. So there's a portion there on Henry Street. They have not adhered to the rules and regulations that were imposed upon them. Windows upstairs and downstairs open in the summertime. Noise emanates from that. If there's going to be some music, that's only going to make matters even worse. Neon signs on the side promoting various beer brands not appropriate for Henry Street as well. There's also the Ronald McDonald House. Apologies from Stephanie Carapata, the CEO of Ronald McDonald House. She just returned yesterday. There's people there who really require peace and quiet. There's so many units facing onto Henry Street and that patio pub. And it's out of the question as far as I'm concerned that they should be allowed any space on Henry Street. So I just want to mention those things, and I think these are basically concerns that should be the city's concerns. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public to speak? Seeing none. Any questions of staff? No. Councillor Cressy to speak.
Thank you. So I'm going to move to defer this indefinitely. I don't support this application. We've heard strongly from the community that they don't support this application. Our process in Ward 20 on any flankage patio is that in a downtown environment where people are living close to where people are working and where they're playing in the evenings, that a case has to be made working closely and in collaboration with the community before anything goes forward. That hasn't happened here in a way that satisfies the community or me. And so I'm not supporting this application, and I'm moving to defer it indefinitely.
Are there any other members of council to speak? No. All those in favor of the indefinite deferral? All those opposed? That item carries. TE 14.24, residential demolition application 123 Dunvegan Road, Ward 22. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? No. Are there any questions of staff? None. Ward 22, Councillor Matlow.
I'm moving the, Mr. Chair, the alternate recommendations. This is simply two houses that will soon become one house with an expanded landscaped yard.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.25, residential demolition application 282 Eglinton Avenue East. Any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, Councillor Matlow.
I have a motion that adds conditions to the approval. I must admit that I had to hold myself back from adding any unreasonable and temperate conditions on Metrolinx's work on Eglinton, but on this specific one, I moved ones that I think will respect the neighbors' needs to be informed and involved in next steps forward.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.26, residential demolition application 875 Eglinton Avenue West, Ward 22. Any members of the public to speak to this item?
Actually 21, but it's hard to get a good clerk these days.
You know what? I'm happy to move to. I'm happy to move just to knock them all down. Whatever.
Let's not put this on the clerk. It's on the staff.
Staff, okay. I thought I would just wake up the crowd.
Are there any members of the public to speak to this item?
We're actually annexing parts of your
Councillor
work.
Mihevc to speak.
Yes, I'll move the staff recommendations, noting that I can get exactly what the Councillor Matlow through the beautification agreement.
You have to move one or two. Approve or not.
Approve.
They're both approved, but
Approve.
One's with conditions, one's without. Number one or number two?
Hold on.
Well, I'm going to release mine, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we're just going to go through by order.
Because at 12:30, work to rule comes into effect.
We are going to go in order, and that starts us right at the back at the beginning. So we're going to try to do this. Do you have?
Number two.
Number two. All those in favor of number two? That item is approved. So.
Can I note that at 12:30,
Which
work
item?
to rule starts, so we have to finish
Yeah,
speed.
we're just going to go through them by order. I don't know where the speed humps
They have,
were
no,
then.
it was number.
Yeah. So 14.36 is the next one in order. That's the preliminary report for 14 Dewhurst zoning amendment application. Are there any members of the public to speak to this item? Seeing none. Councillor Fragedakis.
Okay, so I'll move those staff recommendations, and I have 3 amendments if they can go up on the screen. They're the standard ones, so just an expanded notification area, a community consultation meeting, and the establishment of a working group.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.37.
I have,
This is a preliminary report 1117 Gerrard Street.
I have amendments there, Mr. Chair, which are going to go up on the screen. There they are, to include parent resources and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 14.39 is an assumption of services Don Mount Court subdivision registered plan. Are there, I have a speaker on the list here.
Going to defer that, the speaker.
Does the speaker still, this is a Rosalind Hauser? No? Okay.
Defer to June the 14th.
You don't want to indefinite?
No, I thought the new clerk should get a chance to.
On the sixth deferral, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries.
Just we'll break her in.
Next is 14.66. This is Councillor Councillor Mary Margaret
I
McMahon.
had a motion.
Traffic comment.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. 1439, there was a motion. Yeah, good.
Yeah, the deferral. That was taken.
Within-
Traffic calming on Devon Road. Hi there. We have some speakers. If you could state your name, have a seat, make sure the light's on in front of you. And remember, you're on television.
And that
My name is Dan Locke,
Problem.
and I'm a resident and parent on Devon Road. This is my son Owen, my daughter Gemma, and our neighbor Sophie. We're representing the residents on Devon Road. First of all, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak. So Devon Road is the first side street east of Woodbine on Gerrard. The concerning question is the use of Devon Road as a conduit between Woodbine and Gerrard. Specifically, vehicles access Devon Road off of Woodbine and proceed to travel at dangerous speeds up Devon Road to Woodbine. As well, vehicles also use Devon Road in the other direction under similar circumstances. Devon Road is heavily populated with many families, children, and pets. On behalf of the residents on Devon Road, I am requesting speed bumps in an effort to control the speed of vehicles on Devon Road. That, in a nutshell, is the issue. It's not so much a question of the quantity of traffic, although that is an issue. It's the speed at which the vehicles travel up and down Devon Road, and it's just a matter of time before someone gets hurt and possibly a fatality occurs. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you guys have anything to add?
You want to tell them what you did last night?
No?
She's a little nervous, but I will speak on her behalf. So the kids on Devon Road took it upon themselves when this issue was identified from a grassroots level to sell lemonade, actually. And when we met with Councillor McMahon last summer for the first time, the kids actually brought the money that they generated, handed it over to Councillor McMahon and said, here, if this is what you need to put the speed bumps on the road, then absolutely do that. So from a grassroots standpoint, this is a small segment of the population, but I truly believe that the enthusiasm of these children represents the enthusiasm of the kids on the street and wanting to keep the street as safe as possible.
Thank you very much. Just so people are aware, we have 5 minutes. We're not going into lunch. So, and there's only about 8 items left on the agenda. Councillor McMahon?
Yes, I'm always succinct. I did not take the lemonade money, just FYI. But I love their initiative, and I just would move alternate recommendations to install the speed bumps.
All those in favor? Opposed? That item carries. Thank you very much for coming. TE 14.68, extension of overnight on-street parking permit hours, Viral Avenue, Ward 30, Councillor Fletcher. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.69, realignment of parking permit area 7E to exclude 7779 East Donway Road and 661677 Queen Street East, Councillor Fletcher. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.70, improving traffic safety on Oakville Avenue with an additional speed hump, Ward 30, Councillor Fletcher.
based on this motion, and this is where all the TTC staff go up and down this street in order to get to the Greenwood Yards.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.7 is the party clause. Are there any amendments? No? Yep. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. TE 14.74, this is the new business 189 DuPont OMB appeal.
I will move the recommendations in my letter for city staff to attend the OMB hearing.
All those in favor? Opposed? That item carries. TE 14.75, this is added new business, parking amendments, Gwen Avenue. Councillor
Move the two
Perks.
recommendations in my letter.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Can I have a motion to add new business TE 14.76, speed limit reduction for 50 kilometers an hour to 30 kilometers an hour on Gilead Place?
Gilead
All those in
Place, I'll
favor?
move it.
Opposed? That carries. Yeah. We have a brief presentation do you want to put forward the bills? No, let's do the bills, and then we'll do a presentation. We're just getting the numbers done. Oh, the chair gets to read the bills. That the Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declares bylaws bills 168 to 169, 172 to 174, 179 to 186, and 191 to 193 prepared for the February 23rd, 2016 meeting 14 of the Community Council. All those in favor? Opposed? That item carries.
I have the confirmatory bill that the Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw the confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceeding of the Toronto and East York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 14 on February the 23rd, 2016.
All those in favor? Opposed? That item carries. And before we adjourn, I just wanted to pass on my sincerest thanks and appreciation. There are a handful of people in this city that keep the trains running on time, that keep the permits for booze going, that make sure that people are informed about the decisions we make at our city. They're making sure that the bylaws are accurate and everything we do is made legal. I'll adjourn the meeting, but just that was the official part. We don't often give them credit. We often make their lives more difficult by handing them amendments that they can't read at times that are not appropriate, that they have so much on their plate. I don't think there is a clerk that has kept her cool with all of you, and you're demanding. I know, I hear about it, but she keeps her cool when dealing with you, and she makes sure she brings all this together. And so I would like to thank her from the very bottom of my heart. She's made chairing this committee so easy. She's given up so much for her community and our city. And Roz, we really will miss you, and we hope you have a wonderful retirement.
Thank you very much.
And maybe it should have been brought to you prior to when we were driving you to drink, but we understand you do enjoy the sherry.
I do.
So we brought some glasses and some sherry for you to enjoy.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
And as is customary, I believe the Transportation Department have a presentation they'd like to make.
We do. Ross, for all the years of hard work and putting up with staff, not only members of council, we felt it's appropriate to present you with your own sign. And we wish you all the best.
Well, thank you very much.
I'll leave it in here for you.
Okay, if I could just say a few words.
Oh, yeah. Sit down.
No, I'd just like to thank you all very, very much. It has been a joy having Toronto and East York Community Council after some of the standing committees. Although I have to admit, I always enjoyed Works Committee, which was pretty dry. And as mentioned to Councillor Matlow, the worst committee that I ever had to do, and he didn't believe there was such a one, was a subcommittee of works called the Pathological Waste Subcommittee, which dealt with waste of hospitals, and that truly turned you green in those meetings. But on the other side, there were some great committees, like I love the Advisory Committee on Homes for the Aged, because that dealt with actual people. And the one other one that was great was the Robertson House Working Group with Councillor Roger Hollander. And no, they did have councillors. They did have councillors, but they were certainly, because they were people-oriented, were sort of a lot more personal. So I really enjoyed them. But I did start my career with Metro in transportation, in roads and traffic, over in the Simpsons Tower. And it was a very different world because the engineers really didn't think very politically.
But they were a joy to work with. They were a joy to work with. They just thought differently, as do, I think, planners, but they have a lot of fun, the planners, and I have a lot of fun with the planners, so I want to thank planning very much. I did spend 3 years in metro planning for the commissioner and a couple of years in metro housing, so I've moved around a fair bit before coming to clerks, but it has been a joy. And so I want to thank you all very, very much, and particularly to the staff of TEYCC who have been great, especially Tony, I think, who's been with me for something like 25, 6 years or more, maybe. Well, ever since I've had my children, so it's been a long time. So I want to thank you all very, very much. It's been great. Thank you. But thank you.
Sound familiar to you? Little Black Sabbath, anyone?